Greetings, this is Professor Jones, and we're going to get into Chapter 7 of the textbook for lifespan, Physical and Cognitive Development in Early Childhood. The chapter outline, we're going to look at physical changes, cognitive changes, language development, and early childhood education. What are those physical changes? We have body growth and changes. We have motor development. We have sleep. We have nutrition and exercise, and illness and death are all physical changes. Let's get into body growth and change. So we have height. The average growth is about 2.5 inches to about 5 to 10 pounds in the early years during early childhood. Growth patterns vary individually, and two of the most important contributors to height differences are ethnic origin and nutrition. Growth hormone deficiency, absence of growth hormone produced by the pituitary gland to stimulate the body to grow. So your pituitary gland is very important. Body and growth changes, part 2. The brain. So your brain grows slowly during early childhood. Brain reaches about 95% of adult volume by age 6. This is very important. We don't always understand how important a child brain is, but your brain is at its highest level of development between the ages of 4 and 8 years old. So at around the age of 6, your brain is already at the adult level that it should be by 6 years old. That is crazy. Changes in the child's brain structure. So we have myelination that takes place, which is the nerve cells are covered and insulated with a layer of fat cells, increases the speed in which information travels through to the nervous system. We have rapid, distinct spurts of growth, especially in the frontal lobe. And again, your frontal lobe is that executive functioning part of your brain that helps with your logic and your decision making. So this is the myelinated nerve fiber. As you can see, we have the myelinated sliff, which is that brown routed line, and then we have the axon inside of it. So that's just a microscopic view of the myelinated nerve. Motor development. So motor development, most preschool children are more active than they will ever be at any later period in the lifespan. So this is why your kids are running around going crazy all the time. You're about to lose your mind. Gross motor skills, simple movements take place about age 3. More adventurous movements take place at about age 4. And then hair-raising wrists take place at about age 5. Kids running in the street, diving in pools, hanging off the wall, climbing up stuff, just that dangerous stuff. Fine motor skills. So a lot of kids develop their motor skills, their ability to balance, move around. They're very clumsy at about 3 years old. They have improved fine motor coordination at around about age 4, and then they have nice body coordination at about age 5. Some children may have better skills and motor development earlier, and some develop a little later. But it all just depends on that kid and the environment that kid's growing in. The perceptual development, so we have age 3 to 4 years old, we can detect boundaries between colors. And between the ages of 4 and 5 years old, children can focus eyes and sustain attention effectively on close-up objects. Sleep. This is something that you probably wish you can get more of, but it's very vital. It's very vital for everybody to get sleep. And those kids, kids like to stay up and do naughty stuff when they ain't supposed to. But sleep is very important. So it's recommended that children get 11 to 13 hours of sleep each night without interruption. Can you believe that? Does anyone's child sleeps more than 11 hours? I know my kids don't. I have 2, 7 and 4-year-old. And these kids, it doesn't matter what time they go to bed. They wake up at about 6:30 every morning. Wake up me, wake up their mom. Doesn't matter. We have disorders that take place. We have narcolepsy. We have insomnia, nightmares, etc. Sleep problems and cognitive outcomes. So when children don't sleep, when they have difficulty sleeping, it does affect their ability to think. It does affect their behaviors. We have children who have attention problems. We have worse school readiness. So, and also there's a more so with the increase in screen time. So we have this balance between what to do on screens, what not to do on screens. I think COVID-19 highlighted a lot of this for us when our children went to doing schoolwork remotely. They're connecting with their, school class on Google Classrooms and Zoom and all that other stuff. So it's been very interesting. Being overweight is also a factor too. So, your body's not able to regulate because you're not getting enough sleep, and then ultimately social problems can occur too. Those behavioral problems, those relationship problems. Nutrition and exercise, something we all know about, we all should be doing, and we all struggle to do it for some odd reason. Many of us struggle with our nutrition and our exercise. Overweight young children have serious health problems early in childhood, strongly influenced by the caregiver's behaviors. Categories for obesity, overweight, and at risk for being overweight, and that's determined by your body mass index, which is also your BMI. So when your children are going to get like physicals and stuff, you want to pay attention to where their BMI is and their weight, because they may be too thin or too heavy for their age range. And the U.S. has the second highest rate of childhood obesity. I'm not surprised. We have fast food places everywhere. If you don't have a fast food place by you, you can just get a DoorDash or Uber Eats, and it's right at your door. So, not surprised by that. Malnutrition in young children from low-income families. So, 11 million preschool children are experiencing malnutrition. So, if you don't have the resources, the access, or the information to make healthier food choices, to purchase food in general, this is what ends up happening, unfortunately, is malnutrition. The biggest problem is iron deficiency anemia. So again, kids not getting enough iron, which affects their blood, which can have other detrimental impacts later. Exercise should be incurred daily. This is something that I'm struggling with. My 7-year-old, she loves her screen. She wants to be on that screen all the time. She hates doing anything physical. It sucks. Unless she's playing. Play is good, but just trying to get her just to do some little bit of exercise. It's a big, big, big struggle. Illness and death. The United States is the leading cause of the United States in U.S. children are accidents. Yes, unintentional things, injuries, TVs falling on kids, cutting themselves, stabbing themselves, finding parents' weapons. Those are unintentional injuries, and that's the number one cause. We have the congenital malformations. We have deformities, and then we have chromosomal abnormalities. So these are all physical elements of children that lead to their death. Child safety is very important. We have to stress being safe for children, making sure that we have safe environments for these children to be in. They don't have access to drugs, guns, alcohol, or dangerous objects. Very important. And then environmental things like tobacco smoke. Another big thing. Kids are secondhand smokers and smoking families, and they do have, unfortunately, they can have, and often do have, they have physical health issues later and respiratory issues due to smoking. The state of illness and health of the world's children. So again, it's not just the United States that has these problems. We have famine and all types of things all across the world. So devastating effects of health occur in countries with high poverty rates. We have dramatic increase in deaths due to HIV, especially in poor countries. And it's not just in the African countries. I know that's a very common stereotype of, just $1 a day will feed a hungry child in a village and all that. But it happens in a lot of different countries. Asian countries have this. European countries have this. South American countries have this. It's not just the African folks. Cognitive changes. We have Piaget, we have Vygotsky theory, and information process. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on all three of these. Piaget's pre-operational stage is the pre-operational stage is actually Piaget's second stage, age 2 to 7. Children represents the world with words, images, and drawing from stable concepts and begin to reason. Cognitions are dominant by egocentrism and magical beliefs. So this is about the kids thinking everything's about them. Me, 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 me. Piaget's preoperational stage, which is the third stage of Piaget, is the operations are reversible mental actions that allow children to be mentally what they formerly did physically. Symbolic functionings, substage, so children gain the ability to mentally represent an object that is not present. Egocentrism, that was a term that was just brought up. That is the inability to distinguish one's own perspective from someone else's. It's all about me. It's my ego. That's mine. I don't care about what they want. It's mine. Give it back to me. Animism. Animism is the belief of inanimate objects have lifelike qualities and are capable of action. So when kids are like having, their best dog, and it's like a stuffed animal, you're like, no, it's really hungry. We need to feed it too. It needs to sit at the table with us. They start doing stuff like that. Intuitive thought sabotage. Children use primitive reasoning and want to know the answers to questions. This is why it's important to answer questions. I grew up in a household and community where if you had a question as a child, you were told to stay out of grown folks' business, and that is not healthy. All right. Centration and the limits of pre-operational thought. I'm just like pre. Centration is the centering attention on one's characteristics of the exclusion of all, to the exclusion of all others. Conservation is altering a substance appearance does not change its basic properties. So these are just some things that come up in the pre-operational stage. Here is an example of the 3 mountain task. So what ends up happening is children are seated at this display and they're asked to formulate the mountains differently, and really it's just taking different perspectives on the mountain, and this helps just to test a child's cognitive stage development. Piaget's conversation talk, again, so Piaget would run these tests, ask kids different things like, if you pour a cup A, what's bigger cup? What has more water, or what can hold more water, cup A, B, or C? And honestly, depending on the shape, there's not much difference between the thing, how much water can go in, but that's just helping a child develop their cognitive processing. Some dimensions of conversation: number, matter, and length, 1 through 4. So the type of conversation is numbers. Intentional presentation: 2 identical rows of objects are shown to a child who agrees to have the same number. Manipulation: 1 row is lengthened, and the child is asked whether 1 row now has more objects. So again, that's showing those cups, pouring the juice in one versus the other. And then the pre-operational child's answer is yes, the larger row. Type conversations matter. So the initial presentation is 2 identical balls of clay are shown to the child. The child agrees that they are equal. The manipulation is an experimenter changes the shape of 1 ball and asks the child whether they still contain equal amount of clay. The pre-operational child would say, nope, the longer one has more. And then ultimately, the conversation is on length. The initial presentation is 2 sticks are aligned in front of the child. The child agrees that they are the same length. The manipulation takes place, so the examiner moves 1 stick to the right and then asks the child if they are equal in length. The pre-operational child answers, nope, the one on top is longer. And this is just a depiction of that. So when they're running these tests, these dimensions of conversation, they're looking at numbers, they're looking at matter, and they're looking at length. So this just gives you a visual of what we just spoke about. Vygotsky's zone for proximal development. Children think and understand primarily through social interactions. I'm a big proponent of this. I think this is true. Zones of proximal development is the range of tasks too difficult for children alone, but can be learned with guidance. Scaffolding is one of the techniques that takes place here. Change in the level of support. So Vygotsky's proximal Development, as you can see here, is a nice depiction of it. We have the upper limit, which is the level of the additional responsibility a child can accept assistance from an instructor. And then we have that zone of proximal development, which is where the child, can they do it on their own? Do they need help, etc.? And then lower limit is the level of problem solving reached on those tasks by the child working alone. You see this happen a lot with your kids as they develop. They go from that upper limit and then they slowly work their way to that lower limit where they're like, no, I don't want help, mommy. I can do it myself. And they want to prove to you what they've done. Vygotsky's theory. So the theory is, it talks about language and thought. Children use speech to communicate socially and to help them move social tasks or help them solve tasks. Private speech is also used, so the use of language to self-regulate. We have inner speech becomes through their thoughts. So children start talking to themselves and they start processing with their own selves on particular things. And then we have more private speech or more social competence ends up taking place. Also, we have teaching strategies that take place here. So Vygotsky's theory can be applied to education as well. So you can assess the child's ZPD. Again, that's that zone proximal development. All right. So zone proximal development is ZPD. You use the child's ZPD in teaching. You use more skilled peers as teachers. You practice instruction. You place instruction in meaningful contexts. Transform the classroom with Vygotsky ideas, right? So you're trying to find ways for your child to grow and develop. You can also transform your home too, as best as possible, so your children are being able to make their more independent viewpoints and not ask for help. This was not a problem for my oldest daughter. She transitioned very well to doing kind of that lower zone. My youngest daughter struggles though. She wants mommy to do everything for her. It's annoying. Even though she's really smart, she can do things on her own. If she had a choice versus mommy or herself to do it, she's asking mommy. And it's funny because like when my wife's not around or just she's gone or whatever, and it's just me and my youngest daughter, and it's time to do something, she'll just do it. She doesn't ask daddy for help. But when mommy's there, she wants that help from mommy. It's just a very interesting concept. Evaluating Vygotsky's theory. So social constructivist approach, and what they say is they emphasize the social context of learning and assert the knowledge in mutually built and construction through social interaction. Some of the criticisms are there's not specific enough about the age-related changes. It does not describe how change in social emotional capabilities contribute to the cognitive development, and overemphasize the role of language in thinking. So those are some of the criticisms of Vygotsky's theory. When you want to compare Vygotsky to Piaget, this is a nice comparative table. It looks at the stages, the key processes, the role of language, the view on education, and the teaching implications of both. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on this chart. It is in the text, so you can view it as well. But there it is for you. Information processing. Information processing, the attention focuses on mental resources and select information. So we have that executive attention and action planning, the allocation of attention to goals, error detection and compensation, monitoring progress on task, dealing with difficult circumstances. This is that prefrontal cortex again. A lot of these areas, these executive function areas, are happening there. Talk about the brain. Sustaining attention is one of the important things. So focused and extended engagement with objects, tasks, and events or aspects of the environment. We have deficiencies in attention. So we have silent versus relevant dimensions. We have playfulness of attention. You have 6-year-olds have a fragmentary playfulness of attention, and older children are more detailed and accurate. So you just see some of these differences happening with information. And then ultimately memory, right? Memory retention. of information over time. That's the definition, is retention of information over time. We have short-term memory. Individuals can retain information for about 30 seconds with no rehearsal. You have there's assessing of short-term memory with children, and then there's memory span tasks that can be utilized as well. This here is a depiction of memory span, and it talks about the digital span from pretty much 2 to adulthood, and you can just see that digital span just increases. So the older you get, the better your memory is supposed to improve. Information processing. So how accurate are young children and long-term memories? There are age differences in children susceptibly to suggestion. There are individuals differences in susceptibility. Interviewing techniques can produce substantially distortions in children's reports about highly salient events. Accuracy of testimonies is dependent on type, number, and the intensity of suggested technique experienced. Autobiographical memory, which is your ability to remember things that have happened in your life. So autobiographical memory involves memory that is significant events and experiences in one's life. In some areas, remembering a story, a song, or interest, an interesting event or experience, young children have been shown to have reasonably good memories when it comes to their autobiographical memory. And children do this all the time. Remember that one time you told me you were going to get this, and so was there, and we did this, and we had cake? Like, kids are very good at that. Executive functioning. So that higher level consciousness processing linked to the developmental brain of the prefrontal cortex. Talked about this earlier. Children manage thoughts to engage in goal-directed behavior and self-control. This was done by the marshmallow experiment, where using self-distraction to delay gratification for the purposes of receiving 2 marshmallows on a researcher's return, linked to later success in life. So can a child resist that desire to take the marshmallow, or can they learn to be patient and wait? If it's my kids, doesn't happen. They want the marshmallow now. They see it, they want it. They're savages. So theory of the mind, which is the awareness of one's own mental process and the mental process of others. This changes throughout time, developmental stages. At the age of 18 months to 3 years old, children begin to understand 3 mental states: perception, desire, and emotion. By the age of 3 or 5, children understand false beliefs. By the ages of 5 to 9, deepening appreciation of the mind, and about 7 plus, so digging into the last bullet, even moving up, 7 plus, understand the belief and thoughts of others. Individual differences and factors influence theory of the mind. Again, executive function and advances in the prefrontal cortex are important. Language development, higher social economic status of the family, and children with autism have a difficulty developing theory of the mind. And that's just because of the cognitive impacts of autism. But it's important to note here. As you can see here, developmental changes and false beliefs. As people get older, their percentage of false beliefs gets higher. People start to become delusional. Language development. So we have understanding of phonology and morphology. We have changes in the syntax and the semantics. We have advances in the pragmatics, and we have children learning literacy. So let's get into understanding phonology and morphology. So during the preschool years, children become more sensitive to sound, spoken words. They produce all sounds of their language, demonstrating a knowledge of morphology rules, using plurals, possessives, prepositions, articles, and verb form. Stimuli and Berko study of the young child's understanding of morphological rules. So young children cannot intuit morphological rules or metaphorological rules. Children were shown pictures of a bird-like rug when asked what 2 What two of them were, children suggested rugs. So this is a rug. There you see the photo here. Now there's another one. There are two of them. There are two there are two what? Rugs. Even though they look like birds, you tell them they're rugs and they believe they're rugs. Changes in the syntax and semantics. So we have first mapping, so processes in which the young child learns the connection between the world and its referred quickly. Right? So we learn the ability, we learn and apply rules of syntax. And again, that ability to just be able to understand and to process. Changes in syntax and semantics. So we have 6 key principles in young children's vocabulary development. Children learn the words. So they hear the words that they hear most often. So if you're saying naughty words, your kids are hearing those and they're utilizing them in their memory. For things and events interested they're in, it's going to make it easier for them to learn. So if your kid loves like a toy ball, and you say, that's ball, you show them the word ball, they're going to learn it better because they have a vested interest in it. Better and responsive and interactive contexts than in passive context, best in contexts that are meaningful, best when they access clear information about the word meaning, and best when grammar and vocabulary are considered. Advances in pragmatics, so adapting their speech in different settings, young children's literacy, positive orientation towards reading and writing must be developed. So very critical. If your child struggles with reading and writing by the time they get about 11, 12 years old, it's going to be a difficult challenge trying to get that child to pick it up. And a lot of that's just due to brain development, which we'll get into later in the semester. Importance of early language skills. The phrenological awareness, readiness for school, and reading achievement in high school are all very, very important. Young children literacy. So books can be a valuable tool. They are a valuable tool. Reading is fundamental, and it should be essential. All right. So books are valuable tools. Use books to initiate conversation. Use what and why questions when engaging youth around books. Encourage children to ask questions about the story and include books that play with language. Very key. I mean, man, it just doesn't get any more key than that. Early childhood education. So you have variations in childhood education. Education for young children who are disadvantaged, and then the controversies in early childhood education. So we have education for young children who are disadvantaged. Projects like Head Start, such a good program, so vital. If you're somebody who's interested in childhood development or helping kids, create Head Start programs that focus on social emotional learning would be key, and you would make a lot of money and do a lot of good. But Head Start programs are compensatory programs designed to provide children from low-income families opportunities to acquire the skills and experience. Experience is important for success in life or in school. Controversies in early education is curriculum controversy, academic approaches, pressure young children to achieve, don't provide chances to actively construct knowledge, and do not focus on cognitive and social emotional development, which I just talked about. So it's important that whenever if you are someone who's interested in this space, you're developing that cognitive and social emotional development and not just achievement. A lot of these programs out here are so focused on passing tests. They're not focused on really developing that character of that young person. Universal preschool education is another topic, another area of controversy. So, critics are more important. It's more important to improve preschool education for disadvantaged children. And then also another controversy continues around implementing universal preschool education for everybody. And it's just one of those things that it hasn't happened. We know that it's going to be a better impact for children all around. There's variations in childhood education. We have child-centered kindergartens, where the education of the whole child and concerns of his or her or their physical, cognitive, and social emotional development. Kindergarten kindergartners um, focus on developing status of 4 to 5 year olds, emphasizing exploring, discovery, trying out, reconstructing, speaking, and listening. Then also Montessori approach, which I'm a big fan of, even though I haven't had my children go through it, but I've seen children do really well through Montessori schools. The Montessori approach, the child is given freedom and spontaneity in choosing activity and developing cognitive skills. Criticism is it de-emphasizes the verbal interaction, restricting imaginative play, and may allow for creativity and variety of learning styles. I believe this is the last slide for this lecture. And developmental appropriate and inappropriate education. So developmental appropriate practices, also known as DAP, are typical developmental patterns of children and their uniqueness of each child. Another issue is generalizing about the developmental appropriate education is challenging because children need different things. Children are different. Some children have different accessibilities than others. Developmental appropriate education is an evolving concept, which is true. Sociocultural factors are taking on more importance, and then consideration about teachers' involvement is also important. That teacher, parent, family dynamic is vital, and we have to make sure that we're working on that. That's going to conclude this chapter. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.